Summoned, I come. In Valen's name, I take the place that has been prepared for me. I am Grey. I stand between the candle and the star. We are Grey. We stand between the darkness and the light.
Need place. Place to gather, to fight, to organize.
You need Babylon 4 as a base of operations in a war, is that it?
To help save Galaxy on the side of light.
A startling discovery.
Babylon 4 requesting help.
It's impossible. Could mean a new beginning, or
It is the end of everything.
on an all-new Babylon 5.
You have transmissions holding.
Patch incoming signal. Full audio and video decode.
Purple files accessed.
What you are about to see has never been shown to anyone outside the Grey Council.
And so it begins.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast, a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. We are a group of first-time watchers and first ones who have been watching for quite some time Babylon 5. And we are getting very close to the end of Season 1. We're here to talk about Episode 20 on our watch order, which is Babylon Squared. I'm Scott, and with me as always is...
Justin. Blake.
Emily.
Kevin.
John.
Jessi.
Nicole.
And Andrew.
So before we get started, guys, a couple quick housekeeping notes. First and foremost, we have coming up at the end of Season 1, our live Season 1 recap, which will be on our YouTube channel. That's going to be December 11th. And you can already go to our YouTube account, which is listed in the show notes below, and click the notify button on that live event. So you'll get told right when we go live. We're going to be doing quite a bit in terms of discussing Season 1, finding out where the newbies fell on a whole bunch of different episodes, and getting some predictions and questions about what will happen in Season 2. So be sure to lock into that one. So when we go live December 11th, you can be a part of that live conversation. Along with that, if you want to be more involved in the live conversations, we do have our Patreon, patreon.com/Grey17podcast. Again, the link is in the show notes below. We have several tiers where you can get involved. All the tiers have our Discord, so you can get have conversations with us as a co-host and also all the other Patreons who are helping us out. Along with that, there are opportunities for you to join in Q&As with us, as well as being able to submit your feedback to the show itself. And finally, if you can go the full amount, we have our producers, our Grey Council, who are really helping to keep the show going. And you can see a list of the producers in the show notes below. So thank you very much to our producers for all your help.
So if you join our Patreon, not only will you get our sweet show notes, but you'll get to actually ask us questions. A lot of the time in the Facebook group, people are curious about who we are, which I have no idea why, because we're a bunch of animals. But, people are really interested in us. So this is your opportunity to ask us questions and get to know us a little bit behind the scenes too. So I don't know if that is something that would make you want to join our Patreon, but some people seem to like it. So I think that's always a really fun part. And also gives us an opportunity to talk a little bit more one-on-one with our patrons as well. So I think that's a really cool highlight of Patreon.
It's really cute when you get 10 co-hosts that all have imposter syndrome. Well, maybe 9 of us. One of us does not have imposter syndrome at all. When you get us all involved trying to sell stuff, like, I don't know why you would want to be with us or hang out with us, but you can if you want. It's great.
Hey, I was toning it down for y'all. My ego's pretty through the roof.
Also, we do have a new merch store. So if you want to sport your Gray 17 merch, you can go to redbubble.com and search Gray 17 podcast, or again, the link is in the show notes below. All that, the proceeds of that do go to help the show as well. And we've got some fun little designs in there. A lot of quotes from the show, some stuff that is quotes from our co-hosts, and we're going to be adding more to that as we go. So be sure to favorite it as well too, so you can get notified when we add new designs. And finally, please be sure to join our Twitter, Facebook, Instagram communities as well. We have over 1,000 followers on Twitter now, and we have over 600 on Facebook. So we have some really good community conversations going, and we're getting a lot of good feedback from everybody. So you should be able to join in there and get to know us more, but also talk Babylon 5 with people who are like-minded like yourself. And over on Twitter, I actually put out here today what folks' thoughts were on Babylon Squared, and here's a couple I got. So Lindsay Wardell said, love this episode for what it does and mystery it provides. I think my only real question is, why B4 wasn't near B5, considering that they were made for the same purpose? I know the area was off limits after, but why not park B4 next to a planet like B5? Well, Lindsay, we'll talk about that beyond the rim. And then, of course, Tashali asks, do you fasten then zip, or do you zip then fasten? So I think this is an important question that needs to be asked. So I will go through all the co-hosts and ask you, do you fasten then zip, or do you zip and fasten? And there is definitely a right answer and a wrong answer. So Justin, do you fasten and then zip, or zip and then fasten?
I want to go on the record that this was part of my questions for the end of the episode.
Oh,
but
sorry.
I do zip then fasten.
Really?
No.
Okay, that's the wrong answer. Okay,
Yeah.
Blake, go ahead. Blake, go ahead. Justin wants to rip his dick off, but Blake, go ahead.
Fasten and zip, of course.
Thank you. That is the correct answer. Emily, do you wear pants? Yes, you do.
Yes, I do. No, I'm with Justin, because otherwise, like, it just makes sense. You go up and then you fasten.
Oh,
like,
my God.
why?
Well, you don't have anything to worry about in that department, Emily, so I understand for you.
No,
But I've never been hurt by it. Like, I've never caught the twig and berries in there. Like,
you've never pulled a something about Mary?
right, exactly. It's been fine. It's worked for me.
Stepped all over my something about Mary joke I was just about to make, but
Me too.
as a male who watched that movie, I am definitely a fasten and then very carefully and consciously zip.
That is the correct answer. Okay, Jessi, as you wear your onesie.
I just zipped today. There was no fastening. I fasten and then zip. You all sociopaths.
Yes.
Like, that is the weirdest. No. Science says the correct way is fasten zip.
Yes, correct. Andrew.
Like your sources.
My source is Babylon 5, Babylon Squared.
Wikipedia, Emily.
Andrew, are you right or wrong?
He doesn't wear pants, apparently.
He doesn't speak either.
Fasten and then zip.
There you go.
Nicole?
Zip and fasten, baby.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
Okay, but Scott, the real question is, do we want to talk about socks?
Yes, yes.
Left
No,
sock,
we don't.
left shoe, right sock, right shoe.
Or you can always do do you put your pants on both legs at a time or one leg at a time? Again, if you put them both legs at a time, you're just doing it wrong, but it's okay.
I need to hear from Daddy.
You even do that?
Kevin, fasten and zip or zip and fasten?
Fasten and zip.
See, okay, so we, based on the psychological test we just did, Justin, Emily, and Nicole have issues. And,
Listen, I don't have a Franken Bean situation, so it's easy for me.
Either.
Did we ask Blake?
We asked Blake. Blake is correct. He fastens and zips.
Okay.
You assholes have known me for 20 years. You know my psychological problems. So
Well, yeah, but I don't know how you put your pants on, thank God. Well, now I do.
Also, for the record, us girls don't always wear pants where you have to fasten your zip because we like leggings and sweatpants.
Oh, that's understood.
I love how you just gave yourself a thumbs up there, Nicole.
I didn't
You were
mean to.
agreeing with your own comment.
I didn't mean to.
We're clearly talking about pants with
She's
buttons.
trying to prove she doesn't have imposter syndrome.
If we're talking about socks,
fuck.
socks I wear are foot specific.
We're not talking about socks. No.
Why not?
We're moving on.
No, we're not
You
having
want to
this
see my
conversation.
socks? They have turkeys.
I knew a lady that
Gobble,
wears
gobble.
those socks. Those just are yucky. I don't understand.
Emily's doing yoga now. Here we go.
Come on, Emily. We can monetize this shit. Show the sock.
Mine say gobble till you wobble.
Nice.
Okay.
Nothing is proved with his sock comment. I was going to say the people who are the zip and fasten are probably the same psychos who wear socks to bed.
Yes. Crazy
Yes,
people.
Actually, I do.
Cool.
No, you need to get your toesies free, man. It feels so good when you get your socks off.
Okay, so normally
No,
when
I
I'm
take
home,
his socks off in my sleep. I've taken his socks off.
Oh, really? I'm going to have to do the explicit tag on this podcast, it seems.
With my feet. Like I
Emily undresses people while they're asleep. News at 11. Okay, on that note, let's go ahead and get into Babylon Squared. Oh, real quick before I do that, be sure again to like, subscribe, follow, whatever it is, and give us a review. We really do appreciate those reviews coming in. It helps to get our podcast in front of new people. So whether you are watching on YouTube or listening on the audio version, be sure to give those stars, likes, reviews, whatever they may be to help us out. Now, over on our Facebook community, it was brought up that some people are watching us, but not watching Babylon 5 while we actually talk about it. So they're kind of confused on what we're actually talking about, which, okay, cool, whatever. So we had a request that we were going to have synopses prior to when we start talking about the episode. So we decided that our newbies would create these synopses, and the first guinea pig is Justin. So Justin, tell us about Babylon Squared.
Babylon 4 reappears after being missing for 4 years. Sinclair and Garibaldi lead a rescue mission to help evacuate the personnel when they encounter Zathras, a previously unknown species who says he was sent by the One to help pull B4 through time in order to help end a war and bring peace to the galaxy. Meanwhile, Delenn is summoned by the Grey Council, where she is informed that she has been selected to be the new leader of the Minbari to replace the deceased Dukat. She does not want this position as she feels her work on B5 is not yet complete, and she wants to remain on the station to work with the humans, whom she feels has a special destiny in the universe.
Nice.
That's not bad, Justin. Good job.
That was really good.
You actually set everyone else up now because John's going to go next week with Legacies. Okay, guys, let's go ahead and start talking first impressions on Babylon Squared. And since we've already heard from Justin, I'm going to go over to Emily first.
What is wrong with Sinclair and Garibaldi to even say that they love mornings, even if they're joking? Like, they are damaged people. Mornings are the worst. But generally, I was left with a lot of questions about the Grey Council, whether or not they were actually hoping Delenn would leave the council, because that felt like a setup to get her to leave it for some reason, and I'm not sure why.
Interesting. Say what you will about Sinclair in the mornings. That man has a voice as smooth as butter. John, what do you got?
We didn't know about.
Yeah, you know, whatever gets my rocks off. John, you're up. First impressions.
This was an episode, man. No Londo, so I'll dock it for that. But just chock full of other sci-fi tropes that I thoroughly enjoy, not the least of which is time travel, which I will save for my little nerd portion later. But there was a bunch of shit in this episode that took me, I had to pause a couple of times to be like, what the fuck? And think about it. So I thoroughly enjoyed that. Again, we'll get into the specifics when we talk about just this whole plot, but this one was a big one. It's funny so that Emily just went because as I'm watching, you know, it's kind of a Delenn heavy episode and she featured prominently. I was like, oh man, I wonder if Emily's loving this or hating this, because literally one of my notes was like, here's Delenn doing some shady shit. Counter Nicole. And I was super interested to hear what Emily's thoughts are on this episode. So overall, I enjoyed it. I'm excited. We are barreling towards the finish of season 1 and I'm pumped.
Again, I have to point out that John is enjoying the show now. So that it was in question for a long time. So I'm happy to say that, at least for now, John's enjoying the show. Jessi, what do you got? First impressions.
So I went back and forth the entire show going, holy shit and what the fuck and holy shit and what the fuck. Like, it was a pretty decent episode in my opinion. I thoroughly enjoyed it and I was confused the entire time and I'm still confused. Not 100% sure. I finally have questions for the end part, but it was fun and it was crazy and I enjoyed it.
Andrew.
All right, so I don't know about anybody else, but I thoroughly loved that opening bit where Sinclair and Garibaldi are like pranking Ivanova. Yeah, I was very excited to see that the Grey Council was finally coming back in. I was starting to wonder what was going on with them, and yeah, I I'm just as confused as ever about what's coming.
There's a new piece for a trailer if I make a new one. I'm just as confused as ever. It's great. Nicole, first impressions.
Well, my first overall reaction to this episode was like, holy shit, this episode, because there was a lot going on. Overall, I really, really liked it. I think I have not been as excited about an episode in a while as I have been for this one. I noticed a lot of really interesting references that I wonder if they have meaning, which I'll ask in my questions section, of course. But also, I really liked the two plots. I thought they were both really interesting. I thought it kind of played together pretty well. I thought there was a good amount of, a little humor in there, but then there was like the serious things, the flash forwards and flashbacks were wild. There was just so much that happened in this episode that I really thought it was just a lot to take in. The ending really got me. Like, I was like, oh, damn. Like, I was yelling at my computer when I was watching it at that point. So I have a lot of questions, like everybody else, because this was kind of a crazy ass episode. But I did also like a little bit further into the Great Council information, because we really haven't seen a lot of that yet. So that was really cool to get a little bit more on that. So I really, really liked this episode.
Justin, first impressions.
I feel like I've said this more than once, but I think this is probably my new favorite episode. It is such a hot, steaming pile of foreshadowing that it just had me hooked from the very beginning. Yeah, like others, I love seeing the Grey Council come back. And I think really this is a really good episode for Delenn, because you see where her loyalties lie. I think in a lot where, she's offered this gift of being the leader of the Minbari people, and she turns it down in favor of, being back on Babylon 5. And then just the whole episode of Babylon 4, we finally get some answers with what happened to Babylon 4. And honestly, I absolutely loved it. I love the kind of peeks into the future and just kind of the speculation of where it's going to go from here. To me, there's a lot of like a scent of war in the air. And I think kind of that's kind of coming up where something bad's going to happen, and it's going to happen pretty soon, I think. So I loved it.
I'll go over to our first ones, those who have seen the whole show. Blake, any non-spoilerly impressions of Babylon Square? This is going to be hard.
That's what I was going to say. That's the challenge with this one. I mean, I do love this episode, but I can't get into really why. Other than I'm going to say, I agree with Andrew, that opening scene with Garibaldi and Sinclair, and then just Ivanova screaming at Garibaldi at the end. I love that scene. That's probably one of my favorite Ivanova scenes. But I mean, this is a strong episode. It packs a lot into an hour for an episode, especially with both plots. Again, why I like that, I can't really get into. So I'm just going to say great episode, in my opinion.
I want to know how long it took Sinclair and Garibaldi to come up with the plan to go after Ivanova, because they had to get the food ready. They had to be prepared with making sure CNC doesn't reply back saying, we don't know what the hell's going on. This had to have been in the making for a couple of days. And I really appreciate those kind of good pranks.
Yes.
And they had to have empty containers just sitting around that they can then swap out and stuff like that. So it was a big setup, and it really paid off.
But I'm with Emily. I am not a morning person at all. If you talk to me before 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. maybe, we're going to have issues. So I feel Ivanova's pain when she walks into that room, and I want to kill Garibaldi for her for that reason.
Well, and Scott, I mean, you and I have worked in the same office building before. I mean, you recall there were people that would not talk to me until like half the coffee pot was gone.
And then there's Mary, who we just didn't want to have talk to you ever.
Ever, yes, correct.
She's not listening. It's fine. Kevin, first impressions on Babylon Squared.
I also really enjoyed the prank. I really enjoy the Delenn stuff in this. It really gives you finally some clear insight with Delenn without, tons and tons of more questions. Obviously this is a pivotal episode, and it's tough for the people who have seen the rest of the show, but it's a very good episode overall. I like the humor sprinkled into this episode quite a bit, which has already been talked about, but the fasten zip discussion and the what about socks, that's all funny too. but yeah, overall, I think there's some really great acting in this one by one of the guest stars, Tim Choate, as Zathras. I thought his acting was some of the best that I've seen in the series thus far. As far as Kent Broadhurst as the major, I can't say that I was a fan of his acting, but that we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I will just add that Zathras is one of my favorite side characters, and so his humor and his deadpan delivery of everything, just I love Zathras so much. So I was looking forward to having Zathras on the show. Along with that, I think what I've told you guys a couple times through all of this is, yes, there are questions that are asked throughout the show, but what JMS is good about that other showrunners recently have not been is these are not mystery boxes to where you're never going to get an answer, or the answer you're going to get is not going to be what you're looking for. He will set up some questions and then he will answer those questions. So like, what happened to B4? You guys know now. Kinda what happened to B4. You didn't have to wait until season 5 or a book or something to figure that out. So more questions will be raised as we can continue the series, and then those questions will be answered, and then more questions will come up. So it allows the audience to kind of stick with the narrative more than what a lot of serialized TV does, especially sci-fi serialized TV. So I think this is just another example of how JMS's plan is working. JMS had all of his episodes, for the most part, listed on note cards for the entire 5 years of the show. So that allows him to sprinkle this stuff in. And so we get some of these big lore episodes that really start answering some questions and checking some boxes off. So I'm glad that we finally got here, and I'm glad you guys seem to have all enjoyed it. So let's keep talking about it. John, you're up.
It's funny you talk about questions because I have more questions from this show in my notes than any previous show. One of which I will just jump to right now because I just want to see if you guys had the same thing. So I know for the most of us, I think maybe Emily is not, but I think everyone else is watching on HBO Max. There was what seemed to be a commercial cutaway, and they flashed a Babylon 5 graphic. Did everyone else get that?
Yep. That's just it's an artifact. That's how it used to go to commercial back in the day, and for some reason, the intern that did the conversion didn't cut that out.
Ooh, that had to be a mistake, but I saw that and I go, what the hell? That was weird.
Emily,
did anyone else catch that the commander of B4 called it a ship and not a station?
Well, I don't think this is really spoilerly, so I'll throw it out there. Babylon 4 was a ship. Because, we had the person ask in Twitter, why wasn't it built around a planet? Babylon 4 was created to be movable, where Babylon 5 is not. Part of that is budget cuts. When you went through stations 1, 2, 3, and 4, and none of them got online, they decided to really go bare bones with Babylon 5, so they made it into just a stationary station. But Babylon 4 was designed to be mobile.
Okay. Because I was like, wait a minute. They're calling it a ship, not a station.
It's also bigger than Babylon 5, a lot bigger.
Yeah.
So it's funny you say that because so another thing I wondered, I was like, oh, so obviously they went with a different design, right? So it doesn't look the same. And I thought, well, sure, if my previous 4 had blown up, I might try something different. So I get that kind of, or not blown up, but whatever. Didn't.
Yeah. Sabotage, blown up, something disappeared.
But it's funny you say that it was larger because one of the questions I had, I don't feel like it's probably going to come up again. So maybe you can answer it if it's even known. So you said it was bigger. One of the questions I wrote when they asked, it was only a crew of 1,200.
It wasn't online yet. That was the maintenance crew. Like even the guy who's in charge is not going to be the station commander. He's the guy who's there to turn the lights on.
Yeah, he said it was a skeleton crew. So that was before everything was fully operational.
It's Jinxo and another couple thousand or a couple hundred people.
So it was just pretty much the builders and
yes.
like the project manager, if you will, for.
Yes. Yeah, so basically it's a corps of engineers. They're getting the dam going before the real crew comes on to run it.
Well, I don't know. So I don't know if this is a question, but it was an interesting thought I had. Okay, so if Babylon 4 stays, hopefully see it again, I wonder what would happen if you had 2 Babylon stations, the Babylon station is ship. I wonder what that mission would be like if you had, when I first saw it, I thought, oh, so I wonder if they're going to have Babylon 4 be permanently here and how that's going to interact with 5. And then, of course, I thought, man, it probably won't stay because that would make things complicated and it'd be weird to name a show Babylon 5 and then have 2 ships, or a ship and a station, excuse me.
I think we can discuss that and Beyond the Rim a little bit, but yeah. Jessi, what do you got?
So really, we're just not going to do talking about the show. We're just going to do questions the whole damn time.
Well, I mean, this is one of those episodes. I will tell you again, without spoiling anything, as I just said, JMS does not make you ask questions he will not answer. So
right.
You will get answers to what happened here. It's just not going to be for a while.
Agreed.
Scott doesn't want to pull a Kevin, so
right.
I know how not to pull a Kevin.
Thought about you today during the episode, Kevin, when something happened, and I was like, "Oh, so you know what Kevin said made all the sense in the world." This episode was nuts, and when we're watching again, the commander and the head of security get in a ship and fly over to another ship. I'm sorry, it's a ship, right? Yeah, what they got in was a ship.
It moves from point A to point B. It's a ship. You're fine.
Kevin's got me terrified to call anything a ship. So they get in the little fighter plane. And
it's definitely not a plane because it's in space, but good job.
They fly. I think I had it right the first time. So they both get into the ship. Previously, somebody had died trying to do the same mission. So again, we're seeing like unrealistic shit. Like you're putting two of the three top ranking officials in the same ship and flying them over to possibly die. Anyway. Again, this is my brain not understanding sci-fi. So you see them get there and I'm confused the whole damn time. Like, I don't know what's happening. My husband was watching it. He's like, what's happening? I'm like, don't ask me. Like, I have no idea what's happening right now. So they get over there. And I guess my question from the whole thing, there were so many questions, but they just left all those people there.
Left all who people there?
They had all those people, they were letting like 5 out at a time.
No, they evacuated the whole group.
Huh?
The crew got evacuated. They're gone. They got evacuated.
All 1,200 of them got evacuated.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because what it looked like when he was like, we got to go, it looked like they just left all those people there.
No, because actually Garibaldi and Sinclair, if I remember right, basically say we're the last ones. Or Garibaldi says, you're the last one. Let's go.
Okay. I guess that was my main question from that was like, you just picked 5 people at a time to go and then just left the rest of whatever happened to the ship. But
yeah. Justin.
Well, and I guess a lot of my questions with this part of the episode was the whole tachyon bubble thing that was going on. Like it killed the first guy who encountered it, but then yet all the other shuttles and everything else was able to pass through fine. So that was something that kind of confused me a little bit. But I guess, was I the only person who, like, as soon as I saw like the guy, the one who was like phasing in and out during the episode was like, I don't know, like, was I the only person who was like, oh, I wonder if that's Sinclair? Or like, to me, it was like, if not Sinclair, then somebody that we know was the one. Like,
thought it was Sinclair.
Yeah, I was like, it was kind of predictable to some kind of degree because like they even they were saying like, oh, well, he's somebody who is sacrificing himself for, everyone else. And it was like, okay, that's totally a Sinclair move. Like,
and when he got zapped, when you tried to touch him,
right?
Like, yeah, you can't do that with time travel. That's a no. You can't like interact with yourself here.
Right. So it was like, honestly, like the fact that like then when like at the end when he pulled off his helmet, it was Sinclair. It was like nothing about that shocked or surprised me. So
but
like,
he said you're not the one. Like
he's not the right one. He's not from the right time.
Yeah. And honestly, though, I don't think Zathras has never seen his face.
Oh yeah.
Because all he has ever seen was the suit.
Well,
so like when he was standing over him, when Zathras was pinned by that pole, and the suit was standing over him, and he's like, "Oh, I knew you would always be here for me at the end," or something like that. Don't come at me for not quoting it correctly, And then you pull it off, and you see that it actually is Sinclair. Like, to me, it was like, okay, that makes sense, but it wasn't like surprising or shocking or anything else. Even like when Sinclair said, I tried to warn them, and I tried to warn them, but everything is exactly as I remembered it. And I'm like, oh, okay, that is, to me, that was more important than any kind of reveal or anything like that.
So to Emily's point about the one touching Sinclair, somebody on Twitter said that's the best pull my finger joke they've ever seen. Right. Nicole, what do you got?
Again, naive Nicole. I guess it's my new trope. I did not see that coming. I didn't know it was going to be Sinclair. When Zathras first looked at Sinclair, I thought maybe he knew him, maybe from like the war or something with the Membarian connection, or I thought maybe he knew him or knew who he was, because he kind of perked up and then he was like, oh, wait, not the right one or whatever, you know? But I think he knew who he was. Like, I think Zathras knew that was the one, if that makes sense. Because looking back after it was revealed, the way that his behavior was with him, that's just the impression that I got. But yes, I am a total noob to sci-fi. So I had no idea that it was Sinclair. And then when Sinclair went to reach out and touch the guy and got zapped, I wondered if maybe there was some sort of like, you know, maybe he saw it into his memories or into his mind or something weird like that, you know, but they just didn't show it. And then the fact that Sinclair didn't want to leave and Garibaldi had to pull him out, I knew that there was a connection with him and Zathras somehow. I just didn't know what it was. And then when he said, I knew you wouldn't leave me, and he took off the helmet and he was old Sinclair with the scar on his face, Zathras knew who he was. He knew who the one was, I thought. At least that's the impression I got. So I was like, oh my God. And then when he was like, I tried to warn them, and Delenn puts out her hand, come on, let's go, blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right. So him and Delenn are definitely in the shit together. Like there's something between those two. And the fact that she didn't want to become the leader of her people, and she's so fascinated and, you know, said all those nice things about humans and said they're greater than they think they are and they can walk among the stars and all of that shit came together at that moment. I was like, oh damn,
he wasn't gonna leave her husband. They got secretly married and he doesn't know it yet.
But
he ate the tomatoes.
Yeah, but I didn't expect that at all. Like, I thought maybe it would be someone we knew, or maybe somebody from the past episodes, but when I saw that it was Sinclair and it was like old ass Sinclair with the scar on his face, I was like, man, he's seen some shit. I'm like, when the hell is 4993? That was one of my questions. I was like, what year is that in human years or whatever, you know, because that's what I wrote down. So I was just, I don't know. I was kind of like blown away. Again, new to sci-fi. I've never really watched a show like this before. Some things I have been able to kind of predict, but this one I did not predict. I also thought another cool thing was that the A and the B plot kind of came together at the end too with Delenn, because she was off screen, but you know her voice, you know what I mean? And all you saw was her hand pulling him away. I don't think we've ever seen an episode where the A and the B plot came together at the end, if that makes sense.
John, what do you got?
It is super adorable for Nicole and Jessi, the people who don't watch sci-fi, to have their minds blown by one of the most obvious tropes coming in sci-fi. So I did enjoy that. I do want to talk about the thing that Cole mentioned very at the end, which the Delenn part. But real quick, I wanted to go back to what Justin was mentioning about the time jumps too, that also threw me off, because I thought, okay, so the first guy dies, which, by the way, he seemed to be a pretty handy dude to do a bunch of shit before he dies. He's like, oh, I'm about to die. Let me carve B4 into this buckle. Let me set a course back to the main ship, and then I'm going to die. But besides that, no one else on the ship that went through all those time jumps, none of them died, none of them aged. It literally only affected that one guy. So I'll pause if there's like any info about that. Otherwise, that also seemed just very odd to me.
I can jump in on that one a little
Please.
bit. So, I mean, when the pilot was out there with the Star Fury, it was when Babylon 4 was first appearing. So when the other shuttles were going for the evacuation with Sinclair and Garibaldi and the rest that they took to do the evacuation, the station was pretty much already there in the time period that it was supposed to be at, versus when it kind of flashed into being there. So the way I took it, because when the pilot was going near, there was kind of that bright white flash and then he screamed. So I kind of took it as that's kind of when the station first appeared and he got hit with some kind of backwash or other, you know, issue from that. Not that it was necessarily dangerous full time.
Okay. I mean, I'm willing to accept that. All right. It was just the same thing with Justin, but I want to go back to what we were talking about, the Sinclair thing and how you knew. And so, you know, Emily made a good comment, right, about this timeline, because Zathras says that he's not of this time, which, you know, again, sci-fi ding ding. Okay, so this is a different version of him. This is, you know, it's a different version of Sinclair. You know, he did talk to Sinclair in terms of, you know, for debating whether he knew him or not, which, if I remember correctly, when they first got there, the current commander of B4 was like, oh, this guy's basically said nothing. He won't talk. And then as soon as they walk in, Sinclair and Garibaldi, he won't shut up. He instantly goes into a huge exposition, which obviously is good for the show. But perhaps that's because he recognized Sinclair or some version of Sinclair. But I do want to focus on Nicole's point. That definitely was Delenn. You definitely know Mira Furlan's voice at the end. I thought it was very, very interesting, though, that they don't show her face. They don't show her at all. Part of it could be, you just want to get a good mystery. But I think perhaps that part of it is she looks wildly different or something has happened to that version. So we saw Sinclair. He's much, much older and has a giant scar. We now know that Delenn is basically being outcast from the Nine and from, her religious sect. She's kind of, going solo. So I wonder if her appearance, if something has happened that has changed her, and we don't want to reveal that just yet. So
I kind of assumed it's why when articles about B5 pop up and the photo they use looks vastly different than what we've seen so far, that I connected it to that and her leaving the council and why that change happened.
I don't understand how it's so hard for you all not to be spoiled for a 30-year-old show, but what are we going to do?
Right?
It happens.
I have
it
to
happens.
start trying to actively change my algorithms on my phone so my news feed changes so they stop showing me B5 stuff.
I will say this actually came up on the Usenets back in the day because some folks were saying that, it's a misdirect. It actually wasn't Delenn. You're just making us think it's Delenn. And JMS said, if I'm going to use Delenn's voice, it's Delenn. Andrew, you're up.
Nicole already touched on my first point, which was I also noticed that Zathras was also he kind of got a little excited when he first saw Sinclair, but then realized, I know that's not the right Sinclair that I'm waiting for. One thing that I noticed, since I'm now film boy around here, the spacesuit that old Sinclair is wearing, it looked very similar to the spacesuits that they wear in 2001: A Space Odyssey. I would even go so far as to say that it's maybe they borrowed the suit. So is there any behind the scenes info about that? Or
sure is. You want it? Okay.
I'm film boy, so I have to.
Scott Hot Take coming in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so yes, that suit is actually from 2010, the year we make contact, which, by the way, is a better film than 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Oh, piss off.
It's so much a better movie. It's got a better narrative.
Scott. You totally
It's got a better narrative. It's got better sci-fi with Europa and what's happening down there, with the creation of the monoliths and the creation of Lucifer, which, by the way, Arthur C. Clarke is my favorite sci-fi author of all time. So the Odyssey collection is an amazing set of books that Stanley Kubrick didn't know what the fuck he was doing when he made the movie. But at least 2010 was closer to the book. And we never got 2061 or 3001.
Wait,
Stanley Kubrick is like God
boring.
in my community.
I know it in your community. That's
Stanley
great.
Kubrick
That's
is
great.
like-
You all want to sit around, circle jerk around Kubrick. That's fine. But Kubrick is a boring person who is an asshole to his actors, and
he doesn't know what to do with a fucking book.
Yes,
See, The Shining.
Yes, and actually, the funny thing about this one is with 2001, Clockwork Orange. With 2001, actually, Clarke and Kubrick were writing it at the same time because Clarke was working on the script and the book. And Clarke's like, here's what's happening. Kubrick's like, no, I'm going to go this route instead. I'm like, you have one of the greatest sci-fi minds in the history of mankind, and you're going to say, I'm going to do it differently? Okay, cool. So we get to watch an astronaut get old in a hotel room for a half an hour. That's great. That's riveting. It's amazing. I freaking enjoy watching a guy get old for a half an hour in a white room with no cinematography. It's beautiful. I hate 2001. But going back to Andrew's question, 2010 was the suit, and actually JMS, they were on a budget and they went to a rental house and they said, hey, do you have a spacesuit? And they're like, yeah, we have one to rent right here. And it was the one from 2010. So they rented it. The end.
I'm both scared
so
and
much
afraid.
for not wanting to go off on tangents.
I knew that one was going to come. I just knew it.
I'm both scared and afraid that I completely agree with Scott on everything that he just said about Stanley Kubrick.
Did you say you agreed with me?
Yes.
Excellent. Good job. I appreciate it. I recognize that Kubrick is, fan-wanked by film students until the end of time. I get it. I just don't understand why you enjoy his films because they're boring and he doesn't have any idea how to do anything. So,
especially pacing.
No, and he's so mean to his actors, making them do hundreds and hundreds of takes, and the takes aren't even that good anyway because they're so tired. Like The Shining, Blake, you mentioned The Shining. he made Nicholson, who is an amazing actor, do so many takes that by the time it's all said and done, he looks like he's half asleep.
I heard a story one time. I feel like Shelley Duvall literally wanted to kill him.
She had mental breaks during the filming of that.
Right.
It actually broke her as an actor.
Her,
yeah, she didn't ever come back from that. She flat out said that. But let's praise at the altar of Kubrick. Okay, moving on. Andrew, anything else you want to add? I'm going to get so much hate tweets. You can send your hate mail to gray17podcast@gmail.com.
Because he reads most of them.
Tell him Filmboy sent you.
Well, the only thing I'll say is, honestly, the only thing I disagree with is the fact that you named Arthur C. Clarke as the greatest sci-fi author of all time, because that mantle belongs to H.G. Wells. Cut.
See, I would say H.G. Wells he was a father of sci-fi, completely agree with you, but I think that Arthur C. Clarke was able to take all of what was come before, be it H.G. Wells, be it Jules Verne, and just ran with it. By the way, you know who came up with the idea of communication satellites? Arthur C. Clarke.
For fuck's sake. You know what? You guys can do this on your own fucking time. God damn it.
Jessi, you're up. Go ahead. Take us off this tangent. Go for it. Eyes Wide Shut suck too. Jessi, go for it.
Fucking fuck. All right.
I've seen the steam come out of Andrew's ears right now. It's amazing to watch.
Okay. Okay, so going back to the spoilers, because I'm not seeing anything like Emily is seeing, or like, I get that you guys are like, oh, how do you not get, spoiled by a 30-year-old show? But my algorithms clearly know that I don't give a fuck about sci-fi in general. So it's not bringing up any, really, I'm not seeing anything other than RB5 stuff. Look at me, I don't have spoilers. Stop it. Like, Andrew, I will punch through your screen. But no, I don't, my brain is not connecting on the same level that Emily and John's are, because I'm not a sci-fi person. Like, I've never seen, like, I didn't know until right before he took his helmet off that it was Sinclair, because my brain was like, oh, it's probably Sinclair. For some reason, I don't know how I got there. So it was like subconscious. But I'm not, like, my brain isn't firing on all cylinders right now when it comes to like foreshadowing what's happening, because I was completely freaking shocked and then still surprised and confused. So I'm not sure. Again, I'm not sure my brain is set up for B5, but I'm here.
You're not alone. A lot of people watch shows like this and they watch it for enjoying the show and they don't care about the sci-fi stuff. I mean, you can be absolutely a sci-fi nerd, and as soon as they mention tachyons, it's going to be a time travel episode. Flat out, because tachyons and sci-fi equal time travel. Yeah. But you don't have to know that.
Like, we don't know what those are, and that's my brain doesn't hear tachyon and think, oh, somebody's going to time travel.
But that's completely fine.
I thought tachycardia. That's what I thought.
Close. So close. Emily, what do you got?
I kind of wanted to switch over to talking about the Grey Council, because I know that they tried to make it sound like they were presenting Delenn with this huge honor, and she would be ridiculous to, turn it down or refuse it. But it just felt like a setup to me. It felt like they were setting her up, like they didn't trust her to be on their side, maybe, or they were trying to test her loyalty to see who she's actually loyal to. Is she loyal to the Minbari, or is she actually more loyal to maybe B5, Sinclair, humans, and the whole B5 project? So I just kind of want to know, was I the only one who felt like the Grey Council was really questionable and they were pulling some underhanded manipulation?
John's giving you a thumb up and a nodding, because this is an audio podcast, and so he hasn't figured that part out yet.
Jump in and step on people's shit, Scott. I talk a lot. I feel like people are gonna hate my voice, but 100%. Because I wrote in my notes, because I thought it was odd, because they talk about this prophecy, right? And so the previous leader, Ducat, like they say, like, oh, he's his prophecy, and the Grey Council goes with it. They're like, yep, we're gonna send Delenn, and she's gonna do this, she's gonna do that. Then while she's not in the room, they go, oh, by the way, we elected you leader. So now she's the new Ducat. And then she goes, great, here's what I think still needs to be done. And they go, yeah, fuck that, we're not doing that. And if you want to do that, you're out. It was like, so you listen to him, but you won't listen to me. It definitely felt like a setup, or it didn't feel on the up and up.
Right? Because they were talking about the prophecy, and she was like, I feel like the prophecy hasn't been fulfilled. And they're like, it'll happen one way or another.
Yeah, they're like, to take care of that. What the hell does that mean? Like,
right?
That's not how prophecies.
Well, sorry. Did you guys catch too how they said, they stopped the war with the humans for this prophecy?
Yep.
So I guess they kind of answered that why that the humans didn't, die in the war because they stopped it for this specific prophecy, which I thought was kind of interesting because I don't think I've heard that before unless I just missed it, which could be, I'm a natural blonde, so I might have missed it. But now thinking about what you guys are saying, I kind of agree. Like, I didn't catch it when I watched it, but it does seem a little like, oh, we listened to this guy, whatever he said was Bible. But then like when she makes a suggestion, they're like, someone else will deal with it. Like, John, you hit the nail on the head right there. I was like, oh, like thinking back, I think you guys might be onto something there with that.
And they were talking about all that, like behind her back with her not. And in some ways, I get that if you're going to nominate someone and you don't necessarily want them to know, but it felt like way more than that. Like it was actually setting her up to test her loyalty.
Well, look how
honestly, I didn't catch that, but shit, you're right. Like, honestly, I thought it was maybe her being, maybe it was a test of loyalty because like I said earlier, it was maybe like she proved her loyalty by siding with the Babylon 5 over the Minbari people. But I really think that, God, you're right. Maybe it was a whole setup. Maybe they were setting her up to ostracize her. I don't know.
Well, look what they said with just basically the revote or whatever you want to call it. So initially he goes, oh, that's never been done before. And then immediately like, but I guess we can do it if you think. And it was like, all right, we're going to take a vote, as if, you do shit like that when you know you already have the votes, right? So you're like, oh man, I don't know. And they're like, no, let's do it. Okay, cool. Great. See ya. You're out. The whole thing, I'm glad you brought that up because I was like, boy, don't get me wrong. I was like, Delenn seems a little shady, but these people were about as shady as it gets.
I hate it when you're right, John. I really hate it when you're right.
You're not the other one. There's an attack.
It makes me question what the Minbari are going to do going forward, if they're going to try to maintain some sort of amicable relationship with Babylon 5, or if this is going to be a turning point and the shit's going to hit the fan with them.
Well, they've got their own problems, right? With the faith versus military sect. Seems like there's a lot going on with the Minbari, and it seems like, I would assume, now we're kind of getting into predictions and stuff, there's a smaller sect that actually probably believes in this prophecy, because that's another sci-fi trope we've seen many times if you watch sci-fi. Oh, there's the prophecy, the one that was promised, or this, that, and the other. And then it's like, oh, only a small group of people actually believe in it. And there's a fraction, blah, 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 blah. But I'll say that because, I think Nicole mentioned the human exceptionalism. I wrote that down again as a note. I was like, we're talking about human exceptionalism again. The humans are the worst. Earth Force Alliance are the worst fucking people on this show. There's nothing exceptional about them. All these dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of other species in the universe, and she's in love with, just say Sinclair. Don't say humans, just one human specifically, because most of them have turned out in this universe so far to be kind of shitty.
Yep.
Well, but honestly, you bring up a great point, though, because there was a previous episode where they talked about there was a lot more tension between the military and the religious sects within the Minbari culture, and shit's going down on, with the Minbari. And I think that maybe this is going to kind of gravitate towards, I don't know, maybe call it a Minbari civil war or call it a power struggle or whatever, but maybe this leads into something greater where you start to see kind of a breakdown of leadership within the Minbari.
This is all cute, how you all just built your own little echo chamber right there. Emily's like, I have this idea. And then it just did a little tornado around everybody.
Hey, I am very convincing.
That's true. That's very true.
But honestly, though, it was, she said something that honestly, it just sparked it, like, oh shit, she's right. Like, I didn't catch that before, but now when she mentioned it, it made a lot of sense.
Blake, would you like to rain on their parade?
I would.
Enjoy.
So, here's the thing, though. When you look even within historical context at people that say they have a destiny or that they are part of a prophecy, society largely looks at those people like they're batshit crazy. It's exactly. So it's not so much a loyalty test as you're sitting there with a society that has heard this prophecy that at this point has almost become more legend than necessarily, this is going to happen. and you've got someone saying, I have a role to play in this, I have a destiny in this prophecy, it's not so much a test of loyalty as it's a holy crap, are you one of these crazy people type thing. So, I think that plays in as we get into some of the storyline here. And you start thinking about, JMS has said in his own book that he was part of a cult with religious ties, and he wove religion pretty strongly into this show, as you'll see with various parts when they talk about prophecy and destiny and different things. And we don't just see, a lot of sci-fi, you see the prophecy and the destiny and the person that plays the savior and their process to realizing it, but you never see a lot of resistance or pushback to that. It's always the story of, the savior coming and doing whatever they're going to do. But when you jump in with this, you actually see how the societies and the cultures react to those individuals as this journey progresses.
The other thing I will add to this is I think what may have been lost is not whatever the intentions of the Grey Council were or not. The whole point of this for me is that they were taking away Delenn's ability to make decisions for herself. It was taking away her agency. And I think that was the cusp of the whole story. There was, they have decided for her that she's going to be the new leader. And it seems like that's kind of how it happens traditionally. And so the big argument or concern throughout this whole part of the episode is her being able to make decisions for herself. And I can see where you can get to the whole, well, the Grey Council is being, and this is Nicole would say, shady, but I don't think that's the point of this episode. I think the point of the episode is what happens with Delenn's ability to have agency for herself.
All I will say is I feel like perhaps you guys are missing the last conversation that Delenn has with the kind of pseudo leader of the Grey Council. I feel like you guys completely glossed over that. So I just want to bring that up because, he kind of seemed like he'd be the last one to set her up. So you guys I'll leave it there.
See,
I still don't trust him because
that was the next
thing that she shouldn't have. So I feel like that could be getting her in trouble.
Well, and that was the thing I was going to bring up too. I was going to say the guy at the end, it seems like he's her only ally, like out of all the other people on there, they're like, yeah, fuck her. But he was the only one who was her ally and gave her a gift and said, I'm always a friend for you. So I kind of had the opposite, of you, Emily. I was like, oh, maybe she's got the one ally, So it's funny. We had the same revelation at the same time, but complete opposite. So.
Yeah. And let me be clear. When we talk about setup, it's not necessarily, because I mentioned that, Blake, was that what I took out of that in terms of setup was, look, we've had enough of these crazies. Even in a world of religious crazies, these guys are even more crazy. And they got to go. And by they now, it just seems like it's Delenn. But I am glad that Scott brought back up female agency since we talked about it very briefly last episode and had a bit of a different thought about that. Whereas this time...
I disagree with the different thought part, but go for it.
Well, I mean, I was, because I also had that same takeaway in terms of we don't even ask people if they want to be leaders. They don't. And then to your point about the agency, as I mentioned earlier, so they believe the guy and go with what he wants. But she says anything, they go, yeah, we're taking a vote, man, you're out. You got to go, which I thought was, I don't know, shady, shitty. What other S words we can throw on there?
Swords for 500. Swords.
There was something. Oh, real quick. Big ups.
Got the reference. Okay.
I got it. Big ups to my man, Garibaldi.
Suck it, Trebek.
He rocks the 90th of fucking shirts possible. His 90s shirt wardrobe is next to none.
You almost have to imagine that Jerry Doyle just brings his closet to work and they just pick from his closet. And I love it.
It's whatever he wore to set that day.
Yeah, he's like, I brought a sweater. Here we go.
I feel like we should do a viewing party and all of us wear 90s style Garibaldi shirts.
Oh, man. I've got some striped with collared long sleeve shirts that, oof, they need to stay in the 90s.
No, I agree with Nicole. I think we should. I gotta go shopping now.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're gonna talk about the time travel or not?
Go, John. Talk time travel.
10 to 15. Well, so as I've watched Jessi immediately go to sleep. For non-sci-fi people, it might not be as interesting. But I mean, the time travel is not just even a sci-fi trope. It's a huge trope. But one of the things that I both love and hate about it is just how into the weeds you can get and all the different rules and I super loved Marvel was basically like, now we're just gonna yada yada that part, man. Just go with it. It's just time travel. Just fucking deal with it. So I am curious, and might be one of my questions about, just how deep does JMS get into the time travel aspect? And I assume when you talk about cards that some of it will be addressed, but I wonder if they address any themes that come out of some of these paradoxes. So one of the ones that always interests me, and I think was appropriate to this show, was Newcomb's paradox, excuse me. It's basically, and we'll say basically, right? Like, we don't have to give an hour on what it is and how it works out, blah, 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 but boils down to a free will versus predetermination, right? So if you are a time traveler, so in this case, Sinclair, right, going back and forcing himself to do something makes you question, okay, did he ever really have free will, or is this all predetermination? Which is something, since you talked about JMS's love of religion, also, I love always talking about with religion, because that's something they talk about in Christianity a lot, right? Do you have free will and you make your own choices, or do you have predetermination based on God's plan? Blah, 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 blah. So we don't have to dive into it. Here we are. Yes.
I'm going to jump into one part of it. You mentioned time travel and if JMS gets into it. And this part I will go to from some of the comments he's made is he uses time travel pretty much in one specific instance in the show. So it's not going to be massively explored. It's not going to be like let's get Jessi ready to flip me off here. It's not going to be a Star Trek 4, one with the whales where you go slingshot around the sun and, do whatever the hell you want type thing. He has a specific creative reason for it, and it plays into a very specific storyline. How's that, Scott?
That's a way to walk that line, sir. Good job. Good job.
So we don't care about any of that stuff. We don't care about free will versus determination.
No, I think it absolutely is a conversation. Well, my issue with Kevin, Blake, and I is, if we tell you, we kind of mentioned this already, I think, before we started recording, there's really about 3 specific types of time travel. Usually there's some offshoots, but really what it comes down to is what you're talking about, predetermination, closed loop time travel, where it's always happened, it always will happen, and it'll happen again. Then you have the divergent time travel, which is basically Back to the Future Part 2, where if you go back and change something, it changes what happens in the future, and then you can fix it, but until then, you're on the divergent timeline. And then the third one is the multi-universe timeline, which is basically what MCU Marvel's doing, and that is, and also the latest Star Trek films, which is we just create a whole new universe when we change the time travel, because you really can't change time. The thing is, I can't discuss with you which one of those we're dealing with here, because that's going to tell you what happens next, because we haven't had that answer of what the rule is. I will say that JMS, as Blake has mentioned, has the rules set out at this point. He knows what he's doing with this. But until you guys see the flip side of it, and you will, because JMS back in 94 said on the Usenets, you will see the flip side of this episode down the road. That will answer your question on what kind of time travel we're dealing with. You're just not there yet. But I will talk about that Beyond the Rim, 100%.
Well, that's the biggest bummer, because time travel is one of my favorite tropes in anything, and I think.
Well, I will say, John, hold it until we get to a certain episode where we see the flip side of this, and it's going to happen. It's not going to happen right away, but when we get to that episode, we're going to talk time travel a lot.
What do I got to wait till season 4? 2 years from now?
I'm not going to answer that.
Lame.
But I will say what I do not like is when a show doesn't define its rules for time travel. That annoys the crap out of me. And I'm a Star Trek fan. Star Trek does not define its rules for time travel. Blake, you mentioned Slingshot Around the Sun. That one was, we can change the future and we can change the past. But then we also have times like, what's the one where they go back and meet Mark Twain? I'm blanking on the name of it. Past tense? No, not past tense. That was the Time's Arrow. Thank you. Time's Arrow, closed loop time travel. It happened and it's going to happen again. Data's head's going to sit there in the cave for a while. But then we have in Star Trek 2009, a whole new universe opens up. So, I mean, sometimes they define their time travel rules and sometimes they don't. There is a really good movie I would recommend, and it's on Amazon Prime. It was actually made by a college student. Andrew, you'll appreciate this. It was a college project. It's the history of time travel. It's on Amazon Prime. It was a college movie project. John, I think you'd appreciate it. I'm not going to say anything more about it because it's one of those movies that would make Jessi's brain melt. So just watch it and enjoy it. The history of time travel. It's on Amazon Prime.
Did you see Everything Everywhere All at Once?
Yes.
I'll go check it out. That sounds awesome.
Yeah. The History of Time Travel. It's a fun little college project that is one of the best time travel movies you will ever see. Anybody else have anything?
Now we go to Jessi with her thoughts on time travel.
Jessi.
I have no fucking thoughts on time travel. Oh, God.
We love you.
Did anyone notice in one of the Delenn scenes, I think she was on her ship, that her ears looked way off from each other? Like, it was bad. Like, what was the makeup artist doing?
I told you about the one time where her bone was hanging off her head in the other episode. I really think it comes down to when these shows were made, they were made for standard def, and they're like, we'll wing it. And now when we have 4K and we can see everything.
I mean, it was like Stephen Colbert come to life on Babylon 5.
Andrew?
That did remind me of a question that I've had for like kind of been keeping to myself though. How did like the Minbari actors and actresses like how did they hear like with that makeup?
I've wondered that too.
Because they're like actual because their Minbari ears are like on their neck.
I'm assuming they probably had little pinholes in the makeup, but I don't know.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Anybody else have anything about anything or everything all at once, John?
No, I got a lot of questions.
Okay, let's do it. Let's move into questions, predictions, because I think that's the entire episode. So we'll go to Emily first. Questions, predictions about Babylon Squared.
Okay. My one question, and surprisingly I only have one, is so when did Sinclair decide he was cool with being married to Delenn? I mean, if they're in the future together, I'm assuming they're together. So when did he kind of figure out she married him without him knowing, and he said, well, okay then.
Sometimes you just got to get on that bus.
Exactly.
Justin, question predictions.
A couple of my questions going forward is, how much does Babylon 4 play into the future of the series? And then do we see anything from Zathrus's people again? Like, it's a species that we've never encountered before, so I kind of want to know what their role in the universe is. So those are the two major questions I had. But honestly, in terms of predictions, I know a long time ago I've been talking about a major war that I kind of had a feeling was coming, and I really feel like it's right on the horizon.
John?
Yes, I have lots of questions. So what I will say is, as I ask them, please stop me if it has an answer. For instance, this very first, not very meaningful. It's one of the 9 had gray eyes. Was he blind?
I believe so. I don't think it's ever kind of like mentioned, but because we've seen him before, I believe too, and he had gray eyes as well. So I think he is just blind.
Okay. I'll stay with that then. So did they just not have enough money to hire other actors? They have 9 people there and only 3 of them take off their hoods and say some shit.
Hey man, we've already discussed the budget's really low on this show. If you don't have to pay for a co-star, you don't have to pay for a co-star.
Let's stay with the budget then, because my other question is, because, okay, I get it's 90s CGI, but what are the guns actually firing, since there doesn't seem to be any damage when they hit shit? Unless it hits your shoulder, in which case you immediately die.
Yeah, we kind of mentioned that already. They're called PPGs, and also the rifles work on the same technology. Because you're inside of a space station, you probably don't want a bullet busting through the hull and causing air to leak out. So they are heat-based. So they shoot a non-projectile that is, again, heat-based. So when it hits you, it's very, very hot, and it burns you and cauterizes the wound. So when you hit metal, it's just going to hit the metal. It's not going to cause any damage.
So kind of like a lightsaber, but in a
except it makes sense, Kevin.
Yeah,
it fucking makes sense.
It had the Kyber crystal, and I paid Disney $20 for a Kyber crystal. It's great.
And I'm just trolling Scott because he's a hater, because he hates nice things.
I never said I hated Star Wars. I said it's not my cup of tea.
Oh, you hate Star Wars.
I will say it's not sci-fi. It's fantasy, and I stand behind that.
And
it's
you're
fantasy.
wrong again. You're wrong every time you say that.
And you know I hate it when I have to agree with Scott. It's not science. It's fantasy and bullshit.
It's based on Seven Samurai and stuff like that.
My fucking God, I need a buzzer. I'm going to get a buzzer.
You need to talk to Jeff about his buzzer.
You fucking guys, like, let's not talk about dicks and let's not go on tangents, but every fucking time. Oh, I'm crappy and I need to go to bed. Let's fucking keep moving.
Jessi just killed her internet with her rant. It was great. That one was Kevin's fault. Andrew, you were going to say something to piss off Jessi? Go for it.
No, I was going to, well, first of all, I love Star Wars, but yes, it's not sci-fi.
Thank you.
Also, Star Wars was based on The Hidden Fortress.
That's
another
true.
Akira Kurosawa film, not the Seven Samurai.
You're right. I apologize. It was definitely from Kurosawa, but yes, I stand corrected.
Okay, I'll jump back into my questions.
I love you, Jessi.
Fucking
I love you,
fuck.
Jessi.
So, the flashback / flash forward.
Yes. We didn't even talk about those. Go for it.
Yeah. So the scene, the first one, well, I didn't care about the second one. Again, I'm just going to say it. Stop trying to make me care about Garibaldi and this chick who we never met before, but apparently is the love of his life while he's trying to slam ass all throughout the station. The first one, however, okay, with Garibaldi and Sinclair, is this going to be beyond are they going to address whether that was a flashback or flash forward? Was it from Mars? Was it something that hasn't happened yet?
I'll say again, JMS doesn't make you ask questions he doesn't answer.
Okay, so that was a long way of saying I can go fuck myself. You'll talk about it Beyond the Rim, and then in season again, Go Fuck Myself 3, I might get that answer, or I will get that answer.
Go fuck yourself, yes.
All right. Okay, here's one since we talked about Minbari anatomy I have. Is there any rhyme or reason for the different Minbari bones?
Yes. I think you're going to find that depending on what caste they are, they're going to have different bone structure. So when you see the more rigid, also the females have more, less defined bone structure. But of the males, when you see the more craggy looking, pointed, jagged looking, those are warrior castes usually. But then you also have religious castes, which is linear. And if you look at linear structure, he doesn't have the pointed kind of sharp edges. And then you have the worker caste, which we haven't really even seen yet, but there is a worker caste as well. Blake, you want to add anything to that, Kevin?
I've never talked about how horribly painful childbirth would be for the Minbari people.
They come out feet first. You're fine.
Oh, okay.
I don't know.
Probably a soft bone anyway.
Yeah, it's like children. They're all made of rubber. They bounce.
It might be the last question and lead into some predictions. I've already given some predictions, so maybe I'll leave that out. But so multiple people seem to know Sinclair's destiny, right? So Delenn clearly knows or thinks she knows she has some prophecy.
Zathras says you have a destiny.
Also says, yeah, right. So they know. So I don't know if they'll address it. Do they not tell him because it's one of those if I tell him it won't come true situations? If I tell you you're going to get hit by a car tomorrow, will it inevitably change your destiny because you'll now avoid the street for tomorrow?
Well, I think, as much as you want to talk time travel, we can talk the observer issue. Oh, Jessi, I'm sorry. we can talk about.
Fucking seen the butterfly effect?
Yeah.
Fucking shit.
Yeah.
God damn.
But also think about Endgame, where Tony Stark asks Doctor Strange,
That's
"Is
a good
this
point.
the 1 in 100 million that you're talking about?" And he says, "If I tell you, it won't happen."
Even that's the whole observer effect in science. Even if something knows you're observing it, it's going to change how it interacts with the world, whether you want it to or not. So even just knowing that somebody thinks something's going to happen, you're going to. Another good example is Strange New Worlds, Captain Pike. The entire first season of Strange New Worlds is Captain Pike having to live with the fact that he knows in 10 some odd years he's going to either die or be severely disabled. And he's going through the entire series going, how do I interact with every single situation I have? Because I know I'm going to be immortal for 10 years because I'm not going to die for 10 years. But does that put other people at risk because I don't care? So, that's the whole observer effect in play there too.
Right. So my question was, is that going to be a plot point that they will discuss? As multiple people now have told Sinclair, basically, you're Neo in this universe because we haven't had Neo yet. And is that going to be, is it going to impact them? How many times do people have to tell you you're special before you start changing the way you behave? Although, to Jesse's point, every time some dangerous shit comes up, he's always like, yeah, I'll take care of it. Why not?
Well, I think we've already seen it. He has said after Sky Full of Stars, I have to find out what happened. And he's got Garibaldi looking into it and trying to figure out what happened. So I think he already is trying to figure out what that destiny is.
I also agree with Justin. They flat out said now, a great war is coming. And so, the Minbari, this part where we see the fracture in even the religious sect, I think and hope that will be explored more. Now that Delenn's an outsider or has outsider status, I'll be interested to see how that affects not only her moving forward, but you would assume since she's the ambassador for the Minbari people to Babylon 5, I guess she gets to keep that title. She's still the ambassador, even though her whole reason of being there, and the people that put her there have now ostracized her. So, I mean, I hope we'll get to see some of that. But well, I have a tangentially related question to, I think, Justin, and it's about B4. So my question is more specific in that Zathras said that B4 was like the key to everything. Like, it was the key to being there. So more specifically, it makes me think we definitely will see B4 again. So my question is, when we'll see it, but why is it so important? And why is B4 so important and not B5 that Sinclair is currently on, which does not spell good things for me for B5's future?
That is a good question that I'm sure Blake and Kevin and I will discuss as soon as you leave.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Jessi, would you like to add your questions and predictions to the mix?
No, I have none.
Hey,
John asked all of them for me.
Don't watch a sci-fi show if you don't want some sci-fi shit, Jessi.
Listen, mother effer, it's not that I don't want sci-fi shit. I'm on episode 20, okay? Episode 20 of a show that I swear to God, after 4, I wasn't ever going to watch again. So I'm doing just fine. Thank you.
And I think it's important to point out that even though Jessi is not like getting into the whole question and prediction thing, she started by saying she enjoyed this episode.
I did, and I just don't enjoy John today.
You and most of our fan base, so it's fine.
We should start an anti-fan club.
I enjoyed the episode, and I enjoy all of this, but it's time traveled last night. I lost a fucking hour, and now I'm crabby and tired. So.
It's true. We are recording this on Daylight Savings Time Day. So we all lost an hour while watching a time travel episode.
No, we fell back. We gained one.
Oh, whatever. I don't know. Can we just all agree that can we all agree that since our tractors got headlights, this is all bullshit and we don't need this anymore? Can we all agree that?
Yeah, because it's almost 1 a.m. It's almost 1 a.m. for me in normal time. So
Andrew, questions, predictions.
All right. So Delenn, never mind. I've completely lost what my question. It had to do with Delenn. Come back to me.
Okay, great. Nicole, questions, predictions.
What is a true luminary and what is its significance? Will we see Babylon 4 and the One again? Will them choosing a different leader for the Grey Council cause issues for Delenn going forward? Where did the B4 crew go? I know they were evacuated, but where did they go? And then also, what year on Earth years is 4993? I need to know, which will be 1,000 years before I find out. And then Zathras said that Sinclair, he said the One is the one who leads us. We live for the One, we die for the One. So obviously we found out that was Sinclair. So is Sinclair like the leader of like the revolution to save the world and the big war that's coming up? Or is he like the main guy who's like leading the charge? Is he the one who commanded Babylon 4 to make that his ship? What's that significance there? Also, the fact that they referenced the Flying Dutchman and also the guy who was talking to Delenn at the end, I forget his name, who gave her the Triluminary. He said, we're surrounded by signs and portents. So is that going to have some sort of significance, or was it just, JMS like fucking with us? Like, we're going to throw that in again. So those are all the questions that I had. As far as predictions, I agree with Justin and John. I think there's definitely a big war coming. Obviously, we saw I'm assuming it's a flash forward with Garibaldi and Sinclair fighting. And clearly, they even said there's going to be a war. So that's why they commandeered the ship. And I also think that, to go along with my question about Delenn stepping down as the leader of the Great Council, if that's going to cause problems, I think there's definitely going to be maybe some tension with the Minbari and the Earth Force, or just Babylon 5 in general. So those are my predictions.
Nicole, I will say one thing to one of your questions is you've seen the Triluminary before.
Really?
It was used on Sinclair in A Sky Full of Stars.
Oh, shit. Okay.
Remember, she held it up to him and it glowed.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, I had one question answered.
Kind of. A little bit. About 25%. Andrew, would you like to add questions and predictions for Babylon Squared?
Well, Nicole kind of asked the question, like as she was asking it, I remembered that. Yeah, that was my question about Delenn. Is this going to cause problems with her in the Grey Council? I guess for my question, I'll just say I'll ask that guy who kind of appeared to be on her side that whole time. Was that all kind of a front? Like, is he going to betray her at some point?
Any predictions?
The preliminary, that now I guess Delenn has. My prediction is she's going to be framed as like maybe she stole it in retaliation for being voted off the council.
You guys have all watched a lot of Big Brother. Got voted off and get framed for it and all that good stuff. Okay.
Not once.
Not once. Thank you, Andrew.
Big
That's
Brother,
one
not
that I
once.
actually watched. So here we are.
So we'll go ahead and end it there with our newbies up until next week when we talk about legacies. So we have 2 episodes left in season 1. We have Legacies and Chrysalis. So we are barreling towards the end of the season and the start of season 2. So again, on December 11th, we will have our season 1 live recap. So if you want to watch us live do this crazy stuff and be involved in the conversation, make sure you go to YouTube and click that notify button so you know when we do go live with that season 1 recap. Also, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell icon because we do a lot of live stuff. So until next week when we talk about legacies, I am Scott, and with me as always has been.
I'm Justin.
Blake.
Emily.
Kevin.
The up chuckle nugget himself.
Jessi.
Nicole.
And Andrew.
Okay. Are we done now? Are we good?
No, Jessi still wants to chat and talk some shit.
No, I don't. You better come with a better attitude next time, sir.
I actually think this was John's best night. He had a decent attitude. He was fine. He wasn't a dick at all.
Yeah, of the two of us, I'm the one that was the problem.
Yeah,
I'm gonna actually defend John
tonight.
Thank you for listening to Grey 17, a Babylon 5 podcast. You can find all the places to listen to this podcast and links to our social media accounts at anchor.fm/Grey17podcast. We want to hear from you, so please join the discussion on Facebook and Twitter. Be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Grey 17 is a part of the Front Row Network and NPR Illinois Community Voices. You can find all the Front Row shows at thefrontrownetwork.com. Grey 17 is not affiliated with, and this podcast has not been prepared, approved, or licensed by Warner Brothers or any other owners of the Babylon 5 copyright. All audio clips included in this podcast are the intellectual property of their respective copyright holders. They are included here for the purpose of review, and no infringement is intended. The opening and closing Babylon 5 themes are available from Falling Matter on YouTube.
And what's out there?
The rim.
And beyond that?
The truth.
Welcome back to Beyond the Rim. For those who are new to us, this is going to be a spoiler section. So please, if you have not watched past Babylon Squared, or you just don't remember what happens after Babylon Squared, you may want to step away now, because we are definitely going to be talking a lot about the future seasons of Babylon 5, because as John alluded to, Babylon 4 is the linchpin of the show. So we're going to have a lot to talk about in terms of what comes next. So we'll go ahead and dive right into it with Kevin and Blake. Kevin, what was our first question we had from the folks?
John asked, how deep does JMS go into time travel? Do they address any of the themes that come out of time travel?
Well, and Blake, I think you kind of hit on this already with the fact that he's only going to deal with time travel one time. We're just seeing one part of 2 parts of it. But you want to add anything else to that?
Well, I mean, it even goes so far as to we don't see any of the races have time travel technology. What makes it all possible is we'll see, and we kind of discussed, I think, briefly in the 2-parter that we just did, but the Great Machine is what makes it possible for Babylon 5 or Babylon 4 to travel through time anyway. And I think you could argue that is one of the purposes of the Great Machine on Epsilon, was to facilitate the moving of Babylon 4 through time. So I'd assume it comes from Vorlon technology, but other than that, we don't see any of the other races have anything near time travel technology.
Delenn mentions in World War Without End that the Minbari have the ability, but they can't do it with something so far away, I think is how she puts it. So the Minbari kind of know how to do it, but not well. But yeah, I love the fact that these guys don't have that connection yet, that Zathras works on Epsilon 3. Well, several Zathrai do work on Epsilon 3. And that this is Drawl making this all happen. So I'm looking forward to 2 years from now, story-wise, when we can see the flip side of this and have that all happen. Though, to John's point about the types of time travel, we definitely are dealing with a closed-loop time travel scenario here. And I think that's what's kind of fun with this whole thing when you go back and watch it again, is Sinclair is going to take Babylon 4 1,000 years into the past. He's going to become Valen. He's going to create the Grey Council. So he gives the Grey Council the Triluminary, which comes from Epsilon 3. The Chrysalis machine comes from Epsilon 3, and it's taken back by Sinclair to use when he becomes Valen, and then again will be used by Delenn 1,000 years later. Everything is a closed loop. It has happened before and it'll happen again. The same. That's why Sinclair mentions in War Without End that it's already happened. And so it's going to happen again when they try to say that he doesn't have to be the one that goes back. He is already back. Mm-hmm. So I do appreciate that JMS is very solid in his rules on what the time travel is going to be.
Well, I think the episode actually answered John's question. I just don't think he caught the answer. Because at the very end, Sinclair says, I tried to warn them, but it all happened just the way I remembered. John's answer was in the episode. He just missed it.
You're right. And of course, what he was trying to do there was warn Garibaldi to watch his back, which everyone's telling Garibaldi to watch his back. And Garibaldi doesn't watch his back. The other thing, too, that I think we need to hit on a little bit here, and I do intend to hit on this more in a bonus episode once we get past season 1, is what the original intention was for Babylon 4, as opposed to what the intention was once Michael O'Hara was known to leave the show. I think at this point, while they're producing it, they know that this is going to go a different way. But originally, the plan was that Babylon 4 would be moved into the future to replace Babylon 5. So to John's other question, what happens when you have two Babylon stations together? There was never an intent to have them both at the same place, because what happened was the Minbari destroy Babylon 5, and then they bring Babylon 4, now called Babylon Prime, into the future to act as a staging area. And because it is a movable spaceship, the second series that was planned would have been them basically gavilaning around the galaxy in Babylon 4 trying to fix things.
Did you mean to say the Shadows destroy Babylon 5?
No, in the original plan.
Or was it the Minbari?
Yeah, I was reading through the memo. Yeah, in the original plan, it's the Minbari that because of the Shadows doing weird stuff and messing around with people and everything else, there is a fight between the Minbari and Earth Alliance, and they destroy Babylon 5. We'll get into that more on that bonus episode, because I'm looking forward to kind of relaying all of that memo stuff to you guys and get your feedback on what that original plan looked like. But yeah, so originally the Babylon 4 was supposed to go forward. So when you hear Zathras talking about a great war, originally the Great War was going to be something we were going to see in the show. But then when Michael O'Hara left the show, it turned into the past Great War, and they sent it into the past. So, yeah. But we'll get into more detail on that after we get past season 1, because there's a lot to talk about.
Real quick, I wanted to bring up Zathras from this episode. I thought it was really funny how they didn't find the device on him. So he's in an interrogation room, and not only does he escape out of there, which is another whole thing, but the fact that they wouldn't search him and find, a time device on him, I found kind of hard to believe.
But for me, that goes to, we're not dealing with a regular crew here. We're dealing with a construction crew.
Yeah, they're Corps of Engineers.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, these people are basically there to, screw in the light bulbs and make sure the paint's dry.
Yeah.
The one thing that we will see, and I could go into all of the inconsistencies between Babylon Squared and War Without End, but the one that does kind of I wish JMS could have figured out how to pull it off, is the major who's in charge of the station says that Zathras just appeared out of nowhere in a conference room. But when we see what actually happened, Zathras is going through a toolbox trying to find the right tool to fix the time device, and that's when he gets caught. But, for writing this 2 years in between each other, I think he ties up most of the loose ends really well. But there are a couple places where Babylon Squared and War Without End don't line up 100%.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the whole aspect of why the Minbari stopped the war. Because in this episode, they talk about that there was a prophecy But then later in the series, they talk about that it's the rebirth of Minbari souls.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems to me like JMS didn't have that all completely fleshed out at this point. And
well, he had two different stories.
Yeah, well, right.
Yeah. Yeah, it goes back to before Michael O'Hare leaves and after Michael O'Hare leaves. Because originally the plan was, as much as these guys were complaining about how it's always the human who's the most powerful and the chosen one, Sinclair was a chosen one. His whole point was he was going to merge with Delenn and, well, not merge, but, breed with Delenn, a new species of Minbari human hybrid, and that's how they were going to keep the species going. But when Michael O'Hare leaves, we turn into the storyline of Valen, which is a completely different approach, but it still makes the prophecy make sense.
I think the other way makes more sense, though, because why would they enter into a war at all to begin with if there was a prophecy out there that said that the humans were important? But it does.
I don't think it was the humans were important. I think it was they didn't know what species was important at that point.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, because they explained this in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the Minbari ship that has the Great Council chamber, in Ducat's meditation chamber, quarters, whatever area it was, he had the two Vorlons there that no one else knew about.
Mm-hmm.
And the Vorlons told him that the humans would be important, and he did pass that on to Delenn.
Mm-hmm.
That the humans were going to be important in the war to come. Now, again, they kind of retconned that after the story changed, but they made it fit within the beginning. And in fact, that was the whole thing when Sheridan got captured trying to negotiate pieces to get out of it. His answer was, I know what's in Ducat's secret room.
Yep.
And, answered. So, but I think that gets back to there were very few people that knew what the full prophecy was,
mm-hmm.
and they didn't all believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Even
Rue talks about that in Legacies, that they told him when he gets onto the council what the real reason was they stopped the war, and he was like, I don't know whether to laugh or cry when they told me the answer to that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even Delenn didn't really believe it, especially when she goes into shock after Ducat gets killed, and she just says, kill them all. No mercy is what she says. No mercy. John makes a prediction. There is another small sect that believes in the prophecy. Since Delenn is now an outsider, they'll have some effects for the future. Yeah, absolutely. We're seeing, Kevin mentioned it too. We are seeing the beginnings of a Minbari civil war. We have an Earth civil war and a Minbari civil war in this series before it's all said and done. Justin, how much does B4 play into the future of the series? Again, quite a bit. Not as much as it would have if we had gone with the original plan of Babylon Prime, but it definitely plays an important part when we get to it again. And how important is the species that Zathras belongs to? Very important. Zathras is always important. Zathras is the most important.
Much apologizings.
Yeah, I freaking love Zathras.
Yeah, he's good. And
but not that other guy named Zathras. I only like the one named Zathras. So.
Yeah. Well, I didn't really get into it in the other section, but I really enjoy the acting in this episode by Tim Choate. But I thought the other major guest star in this was really not good at all.
Which one are you referring to? The major?
The major. I mean,
yeah,
scenery. He
didn't have much to play with. I think he does better in War Without End because he's got more to do.
Yeah.
But yeah. The one thing, because I think a lot of the rest of this is going to get into the Delenn stuff. The one thing I want to hit on before we get into the Great Council more, I love that they all are so adamant that it's Sinclair who's in that suit the whole time. And I love how it's so obvious that it's Sinclair in that suit. It's not Sinclair in that suit at that time. Sinclair is in a suit, but not that one. That's Delenn.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what happens is first Sheridan is put in the suit because he's having problems bouncing through time. And then Delenn gives Sheridan her stable time, whatever, doohickey. And then she hops into it, the suit, and that's her who touches Sinclair and knocks him across the room. So it's going to be a kind of little fun, like, oh, it wasn't Sinclair when we get to that point. We're going to have to make these guys watch Babylon Squared again before they watch War Without End.
I like that idea. I think we should do a live show with that.
Just a watch of Babylon Squared? I like that. Because then it wouldn't be the first time, so we don't have to worry about them being confused. I like that. just a reminder viewing. But the other thing too is they were so adamant about what they were seeing in terms of the time travel portion and where they think B4 is going. They're wrong. None of them said B4 was going into the past, which is where it is going. And I love that. Yes, it's tropey. Yes, at the end of the day, the one, at least one of the ones, is Sinclair. They are right there. However, they're making a lot of assumptions because JMS wants them to make a lot of assumptions, and they're wrong. And I like that.
Yeah, because there's the one who was, the one who is, and the one who will be.
Yes, everything in threes. Threes. Which I think I actually misspoke on one of our first episodes, because I think I said that Sinclair is the one who is and Dylan's the one who will be, and I was wrong. It's Dylan is the one who is. Sheridan is the one who will be, and Sinclair is the one who was. So Nicole asks, what is the triluminary and what is its significance? It is the MacGuffin, Nicole. It will tell you when you have Minbari DNA in you, as we saw. It will also help you change your body. Right?
Yeah.
And it was created on Epsilon 3, because everything circles back to Epsilon 3 sooner or later. Because we will actually see that the triluminary, the first time we see the triluminary, quote unquote, first time, is when Zathras brings it to Babylon 4 to send it back with Sinclair / Valen in War Without End, and then it follows on its merry way to Delenn 1,000 years later. Again, closed loop timeline. I love it. Will we see the one again? You will see the one, and you will see the one, and you will also see the one. Yes, you will see all the ones. Where did the B4 crew go? Well,
I'm thinking of Vacation to Cabo after this.
Absolutely. Well, Jinxo, we know Jinxo stayed on Babylon 5.
Yeah.
The rest of them, I think they were probably going to take a little bit of R&R after all that. The other thing, I don't think anyone mentioned in their questions, predictions, but John did say he was interested to see why the one guy who hit the temporal anomaly first aged, but Garibaldi and Sinclair didn't. They actually do. And we get that. That's why Sinclair looks as old as he does, is because when he goes through for a second time, it speeds up his aging process. And that's why he doesn't allow Garibaldi to join them the second time around, because he's afraid it's going to happen to him too. So yeah, it's not as absurd as the guy who dies in a few minutes, but it absolutely does affect your longevity if you go through that time displacement field. Along with that, Nicole had asked what year Zathras was referring to, and of course we know it's 2260. It's 2 years in the future is what we're seeing. The only reason why Sinclair looks like he's much older is because, again, that temporal wake got him. I also, this is not listed on our list of stuff we wrote down, but I did like, I don't know if it was Nicole or not, I think it was, who asked if Sinclair is some sort of leader of the revolution. Oh. Well, he is the leader of the Endless Shock. He is Ranger 1, so kinda, yeah.
And he basically creates Minbari society as we see it in the show.
Yes, he does.
Once he goes back and becomes Valen. I mean, he's the one that sets up the Great Council. He's the one that sets the prophecy.
Mm-hmm. And I do like, again, we'll talk about this more when we get to War Without End. Even Sinclair says, this is as far as I know things are going to happen. After this, you're on your own, because I can only tell you until I'm here. As soon as I go back in the past, you're on your own. So again, I love the fact that we have a little bit of that prophecy / we know where this is going. But after we get past War Without End in season 3, our main protagonists are on their own. They have no more info from Sinclair.
Emily, the whole Delenn and Sinclair married thing, not the case. They did not get married.
But she's not wrong, because when that episode was filmed, the whole intention was that Delenn and Sinclair would get together. So she's reading it right. It's just the storyline changed.
The thing is, though, at this point, they knew that was going to change.
But not when they filmed Parliament of Dreams, which is what she's referring to. Because when was Parliament of Dreams? When was the production order on that sucker? I'm looking. Please hold. Parliament of Dreams was filmed 8th. I don't think they knew. I think at that point we were still, Sinclair is going to meld the species at that point. So I think Emily is 100% right. JMS just, changed it.
So what do you guys make of Emily's take on it that the Grey Council set up Delenn?
BS.
I don't, but
because we know that's not the case.
Right, but I thought it was a really interesting take, and I never would have thought of it, but I thought it was a really fascinating take.
Well, and that's what I really truly love about having the newbies on this is we're getting, because we know what happens, so we can't make these assumptions. And if we did, I can't remember what my assumptions were back in the day. So I'm loving seeing stuff that I didn't think about or I would never think about. But yeah. So, I mean, it is actually absolutely, I did love the fact, and Emily made a joke about this to me on the side. If she ever needs to start a cult, she's going to go with these guys first because she can get them to believe anything if she just talks a little bit longer. Because she had them all on board within a few minutes of that. But no, I think it's just the Minbari are slaves to tradition. And so the tradition is the leader gets chosen and the leader steps in and you're in charge. And that's how it's going to go. And they've never had somebody like Delenn who decided that she wanted to take a different path. So I don't think it was ever a setup. Now, there will be setups later. Delenn's going to get set up a lot, especially by the Warrior cast, but that ain't happening yet. Yeah, well, to Emily's point too, when did Sinclair get okay with being married to Delenn? I'm looking forward to her specifically seeing the flip side of that scene, where we find out that Delenn is just caring for her old friend more so than anything else. And of course they do know, and it's impossible to keep this spoiler from being spoiled, but they do know that Delenn's going to look different. Of course, back in the day, that wasn't the case. So when you didn't see Delenn's face, you didn't know why, but they all know why. But that won't be a problem in 2 episodes, or 4 episodes, I guess. I'm going to make it, without lying to them, I'm going to try to make them believe that Michael O'Hare is not coming back at all. So when he does come back in War Without End, I think it'll be a surprise. Same way is when Claudia Christian leaves the show, I don't want them to know that she's going to come back, even though, yes, meta, she didn't come back. The episode was filmed before she left, blah, blah, blah. But I want them to be surprised when she shows up for Sleeping in the Light, too. Andrew, question. The Grey Council leader that appeared to be on Delenn's side, will he betray her? No. I think he really, truly believes that Delenn's right. Because much like John said, there are people who believe in the prophecy and people who don't. And this is one of those guys who thinks Delenn is right. So he's trying to back her up. There's going to be other members of the Grey Council who do not believe Delenn is right. You mentioned Nehruin. We'll see him soon. Again, Nehruin's arc in this show is great as well, too. I freaking love Nehruin.
Yeah. So
I'm looking forward to seeing him for the first time next week.
Vickery is phenomenal actor.
Well, hopefully he answers my emails. Let's see. Prediction: the Triluminary she'll be framed for stealing it. No. But it will come back to haunt her in Atonement. Everything that she's done, all the decisions that she makes, will come back, much like Sinclair had in Eyes. When we get to Atonement, Delenn will have to deal with the same kind of stuff. Because her decisions have consequences. Because this is not Star Trek. Decisions have consequences.
The other thing I want to bring up, why JMS didn't have the caste system with the Minbari figured out to where there were only 2 castes early in the season.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big gaffe.
Here's the thing. I get where you're coming from on that. I understand what you mean by gaffe, but it's not. I mean, we're expecting this showrunner to have everything mapped out, and he will be the first to say he had most of it mapped out, but things change.
Yeah.
It's one thing to say something in season 1 and then get it wrong in season 3. It's another thing to retcon something in season 3 that you never even said in season 1. So I guess I'm just defending him more at that point.
Yeah, and I'm the first one to defend him on the War Without End. Some of the issues, because it's pretty clear that he had a different vision that didn't end up coming because of forces he couldn't control. But I still stand by the fact that the story is wonderful the way that it ended up.
I actually think and again, we'll go over the entire original plan because I have a copy of it that one of our listeners sent to me. We'll go over it in a bonus episode and have you guys hash it out with me. But honestly, I like the way it turned out better. One of the reasons is because I'm a big Sheridan fan, but I like how it turned out better in the second rendition rather than the way it was supposed to go. For one, I don't think any way in hell JMS would have got 10 years. So his whole Babylon Prime thing would have not worked. And therefore, you would have found yourself at a major cliffhanger at the end of the series with no follow-up and no idea of what actually came of those characters, and that would have been a problem. I think they would have hurt the show a lot if that happened.
This was a hard episode not to comment on during the main discussion because, I mean, there's nothing we really could have said that wouldn't spoil something. This is just one of those that's...
I agree. We're so convinced that, Delenn had been set up, and it was like, well, did you even see the scene with her friend at the end where he was supporting her pretty well?
Yeah, but even at that point they said, well, maybe he was messing around with her.
Yeah, true.
So I think, as we've seen in interactions with people watching subjective television, when somebody gets an idea in their head, it's hard to get them to change that idea or to see other reasons why it may not be the case.
I think some of that too, and even as has been said multiple times, no one in this show is what they seem or how they seem. Mm-hmm. JMS set this show up to make you ask questions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I know I've beat this horse to death, but I still appreciate the fact that he set this up for you to ask questions, but he's actually going to answer those questions. Mm-hmm. I hate the J.J. Abrams, and there's more than that to him, but I hate the mystery box. I hate it. So the fact that we actually get answers in this show is one of the reasons why I think this show has lasted as long as it has, because you get a satisfactory conclusion. They're not going to wind up in limbo at the end in a church. You're going to get conclusions.
You mean someone's not going to wake up in the shower like 3 years later and the whole season didn't happen? Oh.
We're just going to Dallas this shit in season 3.
Ironically, Claudia Christian's first acting role was on Dallas. So.
It's funny.
Tracy Scoggins was also on Dallas.
Right.
Yes.
Although she became famous for being on the Colbys after Dynasty was over. That was her main claim.
I will stand behind it. I think Lockley's a great character. I'm looking forward to season 5. I don't think she's better than Ivanova, but I think Lockley's a good character.
Yeah. No, she is.
She is.
She's also
the rest
fun.
Of season 5 that sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which again, I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I haven't watched season 5, much like I hadn't watched season 1 a lot, because I agreed that most of season 5 isn't for me. So this is going to be the first time where I watch season 5 all the way through with the newbies. Mm-hmm. I may have a different outlook. Probably not, because I freaking hate Byron, but we'll see. Okay, guys, I think that's enough for Babylon for tonight on Babylon 5. Hey, there's another podcast title, Babylon on Babylon 5. We'll be back next week to discuss Legacies, and we are nearing the end of this season 1 haul. And I'm looking forward to when we start getting into season 2, although I will be the first to say season 2 takes a little bit to get going.
Yeah, it does.
But when we get to Coming of Shadows, oh my goodness, we are full steam ahead. Until next week when we talk Legacies, I'm Scott, and with me has been
Blake
and Kevin.
And you can send your hate mail to gray17podcast@gmail.com. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
What is it? If you, as you said, if you whack off at the altar of Kubrick, I believe was the quote you made.
Oh boy.
Why do you need Babylon 4?
Zathras tells. You let Zathras go. Finish what Zathras came for.
Zathras tells. Maybe we don't break Zathras' scrawny little neck.
Either way, it is bad for Zathras.